Well, first, it is an extraordinary honor to be on the panel with the two of you. I watch you on videos, I read about you, and for me to be here as part of you is really a true honor. So thank you for that honor. Thank you to the festival for inviting me. A nation's calendar is a tapestry of its soul written in time. Right, so if you think about a culture's calendar and a nature's calendar, think about the different threads of the days that make it up. They're bright threads of celebration, and they're more muted threads for loss. And so if you really want to know what a culture cherishes in space, in their relationship to Earth and others, see what they honor in time. So what was fascinating to me as I was going through the story of the Exodus at one point, is that just before the Jews leave Egypt, when God is giving Moses his sort of final instructions, God says, make this month the first of months. Essentially, God is saying, erase the calendar that you know, erase the calendar of the oppressor, erase the structure of time that you've experienced here in Egypt, and make time new. Name it fresh for you. So that if you look at a calendar, you know what a culture values. And in thinking about this panel and looking at the Jewish calendar, there are three major holidays that we call the pilgrimage holidays, the regalim, when the Jews went up to Jerusalem, the temple, to celebrate. And they were all agricultural holidays. They all depended on the various seasons of the year, 3 times, scattered throughout the year. So one of the things that we did in our Jewish calendar, and I hope that this answers you somewhat, maybe comforts you somewhat, is that the Jewish calendar is grounded in an understanding of the cycles and the seasons and the holidays. And we celebrate in our homes and in our congregations and our community the earthiness of it. The Jewish people is grounded in earth. I mean, Abraham, I'll get to creation in a minute, but Abraham was called to be the first Jew by God saying, Lech lecha, get up out of this place, because this place is not conducive. It is about community. This community in this place is not conducive to you becoming the nation that I want you to be, and go to this place. And in our Jewish calendar, just at the tipping edge, the end of winter, we have a holiday called Tu B'Shvat. It goes back 2,000 years. Tu B'Shvat, it's a date in the calendar. It's the 15th of the month of Shvat, but it is the new year of the trees. We celebrate the fact that the trees have lives and they age, and you can't do certain things to the trees if they're too young, and you have to cherish them as they get older. So we have this holiday in our sacred calendar, which is the new year of the trees. And how we celebrate it has changed over time. But I remember when I was young and in Hebrew school, and year after year after year, we were told the following story on this day of the new year of the trees, 2,000 years ago. It's a fellow named Choni Hama'agal, Choni the circle maker, who lived about a century before Jesus did. And he was seen as, when he was older in life, as sort of a miracle worker. But when he was younger, he was kind of this upstart kid with an attitude. I guess all miracle workers have to have some sort of an attitude. And he was walking along the road, and he sees this man. I used to think he was an old man, but now that I'm 65, I think he was probably in his 40s, So to Choni, he was this old guy. So he sees this man planting a carob tree. And Choni, knowing a little bit about agriculture or what the common sense was, he said, excuse me, sir, what are you planting? And the man said, I'm planting a carob tree. And Choni says, how long does it take for the carob tree to mature and give fruit? And the man said, it takes 70 years. And Choni said, well, excuse me again, sir, but do you think you're going to be alive in 70 years? and the man said, no. And then he said, this is in Aramaic, Ki heichi t'shatle li avhatai, shatli nami livra'ai. That is, just as my ancestors planted for me, I will plant for my children. He says, I found carob trees in this world when I was born. So people who I never knew, can never know, planted them for me. I will plant for others. What's interesting is that we were told that story year after year on Tu B'Shvat. They never told me what it meant. So I had to figure out what it meant. And I think first what it means is that we are only here, all of us, thriving, talking, living, because of earth, because of the presence of earth, the gift of earth, the creation of earth, and its generosity and its restorative nature, its healing. There would not be Choni, there would not be the man, there would not be a carob tree if there wasn't earth. So that's one. Two, but we are not just passive recipients of earth. We are partners in earth. Genesis 2 says that God created humankind to tend the garden and care for the garden and protect and steward the garden. Le'ovda u'l'shamra. We were put here not just to receive. We were put here to give and to protect and to work and to improve, so we have gorgeous places like this. And it teaches us that we are the beneficiaries of our ancestors, so that how we treat the land is an aspect of how we treat the other. Thomas Berry, who is one of the great Berries, we'll hear about from Mary Berry of the other Berry later this afternoon. But Thomas Berry said, "No age lives completely unto itself. Each age has only what it receives from the prior generations." It sounds so obvious, but we forget that we are the beneficiaries of prior generations. If prior generations did to us what we are doing to subsequent generations, we would not be able to live the life of blessing that we live today. So we have to be responsible. So the second thing is, as we are the recipients of prior generations, so we are the ancestors of future generations. And how we, this is where I also get choked up, how we as people who are living in the most golden era of history can treat the earth and therefore each other in such a shabby way just breaks my heart. It means that we are not demonstrating the gratitude that we need. Liberty Hyde Bailey. How many of you have heard of Liberty Hyde Bailey? Right. Your homework is to Google Liberty Hyde Bailey. There is a free ebook online called This Holy Earth. Liberty Hyde Bailey lived at the turn of the 20th century, and he was an agronomist. He worked actually for Theodore Roosevelt to help people reconnect to the county, the country, the land, because there was this great urbanization then. It's a fabulous spiritual book called This Holy Earth. He said, "One does not act rightly toward one's fellows if one does not know how to act rightly toward the earth." So the way that we, as you were saying, the way that we act toward the earth is a demonstration of the way that we act to the other. Genesis 1 knows this. We do. Our tradition, our Judeo-Christian tradition does know the fact that we are dependent on creation. Genesis 1 is it's a paean. It's a revelatory explosion of the beauty of creation. Each day, right? The story goes through each day of creation, and each day of creation, except for one, then it gets a double one on the other end. But at any rate, relatively, each day of creation is blessed by God. What does God say with each day of creation? It is good. It is good, which means that each and every element of creation in and of itself has value. It's not there for us. It is not there so that we can consume it or use it as a commodity or trade it or some otherwise abuse it. Each and every element of creation is of value, but then we get to the sixth day where humans come to. And what does God say about that day? It is very good. What does that mean? It means that while each and everything has its unique inherent value, it is when we all come together in relationship as a whole, as systems that work and thrive. That's the ultimate blessing. It is very good. Now, very good is not perfect. We still have to work. I mean, that's part of, I think, the human calling, is that we take the very good and then God hands this over, this very good creation, God hands this over to us. And it is our calling to strive to make it even better. That's what we are supposed to do. We are not here to dominate. You know, we are often told that the Judeo-Christian tradition is one of the causes of the desecration of the earth. Why? Because it says in Genesis 1 that we should subdue and have dominion over the earth. But what does it also say there? That we are made in the image of God. And at that moment that we are told that we should have dominion over the earth, we are told that we are also made in the image of God. And what is the image of God at that point in time, up to that point in the story? God is creator. God is life giver. God is sustainer. So we are taking over the power. We cannot neglect the fact that we have great power as human beings. But we should use that power as God used God's power to sustain and create and to bless. And we know that because right after we're given that blessing of that power, what's the very next thing that happens in the story? The seventh day. And what's the seventh day? The day of rest. So just as we're being given that great power that God says, okay, now you have this great gift of capacity and dreaming and, ambition. And what do you have to do? Sit and think about what it's all about. And there was a great rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel, a 20th century rabbi, who says, to gain control of the world of space is certainly one of our tasks. We are not here to be passive. We are here to be active as active partners in God's grand scheme of life. It is the way that we create society and abundance and fulfillment of destinies. But creation, those 6 days when we're to work, is not everything. Sabbath is there to restrain the excesses of work. And Heschel says, in this way, defining in the most beautiful way I know, Sabbath. There is a realm of time where the goal is not to have, but to be, not to own, but to give, not to control, but to share, and not to subdue, but to be in accord. And in fact, the Sabbath is not what a lot of people think. Oh, yeah, you work 6 days, you're exhausted, you rest, you can get back up and work another 6 days in a hectic fashion, then you rest, you can work back. It's just the opposite. We work 6 days so that on the Sabbath we can live for a moment that precious goal of life when we all feel we have enough. We are full. We are released from this incessant desire of needing more. It's when we feel we have all that we need. That is why we rest, because there's a fullness of spirit and a fullness of resources, a fullness of relationship. So the Sabbath is that vision. The rabbis call it a vision of the world to come. It's that moment and place and time when we are full. We have sova. We don't want any more. I have about 3 pages left of notes in about 2 minutes. So I'm going to quickly just run through this next thing. Judaism just doesn't teach this in the creation stories. It inscribes this in our agricultural laws. As I say, we are a people of the land, and we have 3 holidays where we remind ourselves of that. But every season of farming, the Jewish Bible also says you have to understand your place in the earth. When a farmer farms and then harvests, he or she has to understand that there are times when elements of his produce is not his. We have 3 levels of giving that remind us that everything that we grow is not only because of us and we don't own it exclusively. They're peah, leket, and shichacha. And just to run real fast through it, peah are the corners of the field. How many of you have read these parts of the Bible and know about this? Peah are the corners of the field. What the Jewish law says is that as a farmer, you must farm your entire field as you would for yourself, as if you were the beneficiary of it. But you must also leave the corners of your field for those who need, so that they can come and harvest in dignity. And you can't scrimp on the sides. You got to put as much seed on the corners as you would in the center. You can't scrimp on the water, But what does it say? It means from the moment you begin to plow, from the moment that you put seeds down there, you understand that you are only a piece of the productivity and creation of the world. That there is God's hand in it, that there is rich soil in it, that there is sun, that there is water, and that you are just a piece, an enabler of the earth to be as fertile as it can be. And then there are 2 others, the leket and shichacha. As you harvest, if you harvest, and as you harvest you drop your produce, you must leave it there for the poor. Why? because it teaches us you can't be such gluttons. There is an aspect of enoughness. You should know when to say enough. And if you harvest too much and you grab, anyway, I can go on about this, but if it's a beautiful vision, know what is just what you need and know what you had to share. And then shichacha is what you forget in the field. If you've harvested and you gather and you put your sheaves down and then you sort of go and you go back into your home with all the other sheaves and you've put it in the threshing floor and you forgot a sheaf, it means you don't really need it. And if you're so full that you're forgetful, you must leave that for the poor. So I bring this all up because it says in our very activities, remember farming, agriculture was the prime economic activity back then. And what Judaism is saying is in your primary activity, you must realize that you are just a partner. You are a piece. You are a steward. And everything that we have must be shared by everyone. Everyone owns a piece of the land. Everyone owns a piece of the harvest. Everyone must be supported by everyone else. So if I were to be challenged by Choni today, he'd probably think I'm an ancient woman. I would say to Choni, yes, we are the planters. And as my ancestors planted for me, so I will plant for them. So it is written in my calendar, so it is written in my ways of the land, and so it is written in my soul. Thanks.
Thank you. It's so interesting to hear from the different perspectives, and it seems to me that our attitude to the earth is reflected in everything we do, our most simple gestures to our more collective strategies, so to speak. And I was given 3 guidelines at one point and saw them in action as always make offering, always never take, ask permission, and always express gratitude for the things that we utilize in our lives. Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask if any of you would like to make comments, and we can then open it up to the general stories and questions in the audience. There is a standing mic right over there and a standing mic there.
Well, I'd like to say that it's been a great discovery on my part. I'm sure other people have known it for a long time, but to really understand that, from my perspective, Judaism is an indigenous people, indigenous culture, very earth-based, very acknowledging of that. And so I always love hearing from this very, very ancient understanding of that relationship and many other relationships as well. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that. But I'm loving this part. I forgot about this. I had heard this about the leaving the corners of the garden and the garden. And it reminds me of our clan relationship. So my clan grandfather, who left us last year, said, the United States is in double-digit unemployment right now, and they're freaking out. And he goes, but here, where he lived in Zedakan, which is by Shiprock, New Mexico, he said, we've had 50% unemployment for decades. He said, so how do we do it? He says, we do it through our clan system. Mm-hmm. So I actually haven't introduced myself by clan since I arrived. My daughter did, so I felt like that was sufficient. But so we get our clans from our mothers. And so if I were to introduce myself by my clan, then in a room full of Dene, then people would come up to me immediately afterwards and say, oh, you're my grandmother, or I'm your sister, or, and right away we have this relationship. So this is a family that extends beyond the immediate family, mother, father, brothers, sisters, even beyond cousins. This is going into an ancestral lineage, right? And so the reason that clan system can address something like 50% unemployment is we say, my well-being is tied with your well-being. Exactly. I cannot be well if you are not well. Mm-hmm. And so while modern world might not necessarily have clan systems, I believe we can create these clan systems for ourselves. But just that principle of, I can't be well if you're not well, changes a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So I always appreciate that. Yeah.
Excuse me. I forgot. We have a stretch before we continue the rest of our conversation, because actually we are in bodies.
Yeah, right.
Is it a formal stretch or we just, okay?
The, hello. An artist interlude.
Oh, we do. Oh, sorry.
Will that hold, be fun? Do you want to do that first?
Yeah, can I just,
Okay.
because she just spoke.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you for the stretch break. I just wanted to say it's so beautiful to hear you talk about the scriptures, the teachings from the perspective that you have. Really, really appreciate that. And one of the things that I so admire about the Jewish religion is all the ceremonies and traditions and how people are practicing them and respect them so much. I really appreciate that. I wanted to say the thing about the four corners too. That's so great. I've heard that before, but I didn't really grok it the way I did today. But I want to say that in the work that we do in with the indigenous people of the rainforest, everything is communally owned. Nobody has any possessions. So people don't own things. So everything is communally owned. The whole Sacred Headwaters region is communally owned by all those indigenous people, and their job is to be the custodians of that, not only for themselves, but for the future of life. So that way of being creates a well-being for everyone, because the highest commitment is the health and well-being of what you're stewarding, not only for yourselves, but for the future of life. And it creates a very, very powerful relationship with the resources. In fact, even using the word resources is kind of almost
like
shocking.
fingernails
Yeah,
grating,
it's
right?
like that we're supposed to take somehow. And then one of the things that I'm very proud of that Pachamama Alliance has had a hand in Ecuador is the first country in the world that's given legal rights to nature under fundamental primary law. So forest systems and river systems can be defended in court with an attorney. And that now has spread throughout the world, and it's a complete rearranging of our relationship with property rights. And it's a legal breakthrough, not only legal breakthrough, but it's you can feel that is the future.
Absolutely.
That is where we're going. So, and I really appreciated the way you spoke about your traditions, because I think that's also a forecasting of where we're headed.
Thank you. Do I have a minute to respond?
I think we should do this, and then we
Alrighty.
can continue on, because it's an important part of the way of presenting in Festival of Faith to include the arts and include other ways of knowing and expressing. So it's part of the program. I think it's important, and we'll continue, of course, and have time to talk further.